The Address by Marga Minco. Question and answers. Question 1. Have you come back? Said the woman. I thought that no one had come back. Does this statement give some clue about the story? If yes, what is it? Answer. Yes, these words by Mrs. Dorling to the narrator shows that she least expected such a visit. She had presumed that all of them were dead. This leads to the conclusion that the story is set against the tragic circumstances of a war in which families lost their lives and belongings. The statement tells us that the narrator and her family at one time lived in that area, and secondly, the clue that the war has brought about a lot of destruction, and it seems that Mrs. Dorling was not expecting anyone to return to her house to claim the belongings. Question 2. The story is divided into pre-war and post-war times. What hardships do you think the girl underwent during these times? Answer. The story, The Address, is divided into pre-war and post-war times. There are clear indications of the hardships which the narrator, a young girl, had to undergo during these times. The girl came from a rich family. The family had a lot of valuable belongings. Then the war broke out. Mrs. Dorling renewed her contact and started visiting their house. She took away all their possessions on the ground that she wanted to save all their nice things in case they had to leave the place. After the war was over, things became almost normal. Now the girl was living all alone in a rented house. She wanted to meet Mrs. Dorling and ask for the valuables. When she went to meet Mrs. Dorling, she found that Mrs. Dorling was using her mother's things recklessly. Suddenly, she lost interest in the things that had belonged to a connection that no longer existed. She decided to leave it all behind and resolved to move on. Question 3. Why did the narrator of the story want to forget the address? Answer. The narrator was disappointed and disillusioned when she was allowed to enter Mrs. Dorling's house during her second visit. She realized the futility of feeling attached to her mother's belongings that were kept so distastefully. She just left without taking anything back and felt like forgetting the address because she would only remember the past. Question 4. The Address is a story of human predicament that follows war. Comment. Answer. The war creates many difficult and traumatic situations for human beings. Civilian life faces tremendous upheaval due to war. The human predicament that follows is amply illustrated through the experience of the narrator. The war had caused many physical difficulties as well as emotional sufferings to her. She had lost her dear mother. She went to 46 Marconi Street to see her mother's valuable possessions. Mrs. Dorling was a true opportunist who had used the narrator's mother's belongings on the pretext of storing them for safekeeping. She refuses to recognize the narrator and does not even let her in. The narrator gets another chance to visit the house. The presence of her mother's possessions in a strange atmosphere hurtled her. Now these valuables had lost all their importance for her as they had been separated from her mother. She could get no solace or comfort from them. She resolved to forget the address. She wanted to leave the memories of her mother and the war behind.